Welcome to the ArmaniTalks Show, episode 35. I'm your host, ArmaniTalks. Within the show, I'm covering a range of communication skills topics from public speaking, storytelling, emotional intelligence, and much more. Join the tribe by hitting subscribe, hit that bell notification, and never miss another episode again. At the time of recording today's talk, I am about to go to Thailand, and I thought, let me record this talk before I leave. Now, it still hasn't registered to me that I'm going to Thailand. I feel as though it's a long time from now, but today it's Friday and I'm leaving next Tuesday, early in the morning, and I'm starting to begin packing. I'm starting to get settled in, and now I'm working on my packing philosophy. See, here's the philosophy that I have. I am never going to check in a bag. If I can carry it with me in the plane, then I will take it. But if I have to check something in and I have to wait at the destination area, and then I have to see, wait, is that my suitcase? Is that my suitcase? No, 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 that's my suitcase. Then I'm not going to do something like that. And this is important because whenever you're going for a trip that's roughly a week plus, chances are you need a big suitcase. I'm one of those guys who says, I can go just with a backpack. Many people doubt me, but I truly do believe that if you give me a backpack, not one of those tiny JanSport backpacks, but one of those big ones that are meant for flying, one of those Frontier approved backpacks, then I think I can put in enough clothes and be strategic about it where it lasts me a week. But there's some good news. Apparently, I can take one of those tiny suitcases with me inside the plane, so this gives me some more breathing room. But if I had to check in anything, then I am not taking it. Heck, just give me a grocery bag if you need to. I'm not checking in anything. I'm not relying on the airport industry again. And what do I mean by again? Well, roughly 2 years ago, I was going to go from Tampa to Atlanta, and I recall I thought, yeah, let me trust these guys. Let me check in my bag. So I have a pretty small suitcase. I check it in, and they said that it's going to be at the Atlanta airport. Now, mind you, there's a lot of important stuff in this suitcase, but I'm not thinking much of it. I thought you're just supposed to have faith in the airport industry, and you should be good to go. Well, the flight comes on time, but by the time that I land in Atlanta, I'm waiting in the area, waiting for my suitcase, waiting, waiting, waiting some more, but I don't see the suitcase. At first, it started off with 70 people waiting, then it went to 35 people, then 10 people, and eventually, it's just me standing there by myself. And now I'm getting nervous, thinking, where the heck is my bag? At first, I thought someone stole it or someone accidentally took it, but I wasn't too sure. So I go to the area where they're working on answering questions. I go to the lady. I'm thinking this is a national emergency. My suitcase is nowhere to be found. So I go to the lady. I'm like, yo, I can't find my suitcase. Where is it? Who took it? Let's go through your cameras. And I kid you not, this lady did not care. She was this old, sassy lady. She's just like, all right, fill out that paperwork and we'll see if we could find it. If we do, we'll call you. Like, wait a minute. First of all, what do you mean if you will find it? You should be saying when we find out what went wrong. Like, hopefully we find it in the next 5, 10 minutes. And what do you mean we'll call you? I'm not leaving the airport without my bags. All my valuable possessions are in there. I'm trying to articulate this out loud. This is a big situation for me. But for this lady, this is probably her 50th complaint throughout the day. So she does not care. And I'm getting so scared because I'm thinking that this bag is gone forever. So I go out and I'm like, no, I'm not going to leave the airport. Let me just walk around. Let me think of an idea. And I'm waiting for roughly 2 to 3 hours, just walking around, pacing myself. And then out of nowhere, I see this black suitcase with a pink ribbon on a completely different area where other people are waiting. I'm thinking, wait, that looks like my luggage. Because what I do is I always get this pink ribbon and I put it on any luggage that I have because I worried about moments like this. I worried about someone thinking, let me just take this black suitcase or this black backpack, thinking it's theirs. And it's an honest mistake for some people until they see the pink ribbon. Soon as they see the pink ribbon, they're like, that's not mine. So now I am seeing this black luggage with a pink ribbon. I start running towards it, and I look at it, and it's my luggage. For whatever reason, it got put in a completely different plane, but it was a miracle because I ended up waiting, and due to me waiting, I ended up being reunited. But after that moment, I have never trusted airports again because you are in a good position if you don't have to worry about this. Chances are you're naive like I once was. Where back in the days I thought the airplanes, the airports, they're so trustworthy. They're always going to be on time. They're always going to have my luggage. I thought like this until one day something bad happened to me. And after that, nowadays I will just carry my luggage with me. It's because if someone is involved in being in charge of finding your luggage if it gets lost, just understand that they have heard this complaint multiple times in the day. Multiple people yelled at this person who's in charge of finding your luggage to a point where they are completely desensitized. They don't care at all that your valuable possessions are missing. They just expect you to figure it out. And it was a miracle that I ended up waiting for so long in the airport that I just so happened to find my luggage. But after that, I just don't trust it. So my philosophy is if you're a guy, you should definitely be taking everything with you. Now, if you're a girl, I kind of get it because girls have to pack way more things than men. But as a man, you need to be smart about it because if your luggage goes missing, now you're in this brand new area and you need to figure everything out for yourself. Whenever you are traveling that far, it helps you start to build a traveling philosophy. Where roughly 2 years ago, I wasn't traveling that much, and I would make such silly mistakes whenever I was going into the airport. I recall one time I bought this big tube of gel and I just stick it in my backpack. I'm expecting to go through, and the person is like, this is way too big, bro. You have to throw it away. It's like, what the heck? I'm supposed to throw it away? What do you mean it's too big? And they're like, it has to be 5 ounces or something like that. And afterwards, I was complaining to one of my buddies. I was like, can you believe it? They made me throw away a brand new pair of gel. And the guy was like, wait, what? Why would you take a big gel with you into the airport? You should get one of those travel sized kit ones. Actually, just get a travel kit completely. You'll have toothbrushes, you'll have toothpaste, you'll have deodorant, all of that, dude. And at the time, I thought that was such a genius idea. Where nowadays it's common sense. But if you are someone that is traveling, then you start to build this literacy for what is smart to do versus what is not smart to do. In the past, I've talked about how different people travel for different reasons. With this Thailand trip, one of our the biggest philosophies with myself and my partner is that we are looking to relax, see a lot of things, and have fun. I think it's important to have a rough plan. You don't want to be too specific, but you want to have a rough plan. And speaking of rough plans, it reminds me of this Friendsgiving that I hosted recently, where I had a rough idea of how I wanted the night to go. I wanted the beginning of the night, it was going to be photo shoots and heating up the food. And then I wanted to do a toast. And then I wanted us to eat. And then I wanted us to play games. And then I wanted us to wind down the night. This is a very rough plan. Now, if you're asking me, Armani, at what time are we going to play the games? Then I can't give you an answer because I don't know. Because random things can happen throughout the night. And as we were hosting Friendsgiving, random things did happen after the night. Because right after we ate all the food, I thought next up we were going to play games. But I didn't factor in the human element. The human element was right after you eat, what do you want to do? You just want to lie down, maybe watch some TV, maybe even sleep. So a lot of these people were feeling sleepy. So one person suggested, hey, let's get one of those box of Joes from Dunkin' Donuts, one of those big coffee boxes, and let's drink that. So for something like that, you have to order it, you have to wait for it, you have to drive there and get it, and that's taking up more time. So initially, if I thought I want to play the games at 8:45 p.m. right after we're done eating, then I would have been off by a big mark because we didn't end up playing the games till 9:45. Because once you get the coffee, you need for it to cool down, you need to drink it, you want to chat with your buddies. And this introduced a different element to the night where after the food, we were having this social, you could say. And then everyone is caffeinated and now they want to play the games. So whenever you're hosting a party, you don't want to be one of those people that is planning a little too much because there's this level of human element that comes into the mix. And speaking of throwing a Friendsgiving party, there's a couple of different things that I've also learned. One thing is that having a public speaking background helps out tremendously. Because if you are the host, then your goal is to lead the night. You don't want other people to lead you because this is your home. And subconsciously, a lot of people are thinking, we're on the host's game plan. And if you have no game plan, then people are just going to be going all around, doing nothing, feeling scattered, feeling bored. Now, granted, some parties, you don't need a game plan. People are literally coming just to hang out, eat, talk, that's it. Other parties, though, there is a certain theme that people are expecting. So, for something like Secret Santa, if you're hosting something like that and you're just letting people do whatever they want, then people are going to leave your party feeling unsatisfied. They would have hoped that you had a rough idea of how to direct people because now they are being in a position where they're having to direct themselves. So, as a host, you want a game plan. But another thing that I learned is that sometimes you may have that game plan, but other people don't know about it. And they don't know about it because you're never using your voice. Your voice is a unique tool that gives people direction, especially in parties. And since hosting this Friendsgiving, I realized that having a public speaking background comes in clutch in many ways. For example, giving a toast. Giving a toast is a great chance for you to turn this from an event where people are just stuffing their face into a memorable event. For my toast, I was emphasizing turning friends into family. That is what I was emphasizing because I thought that is what everyone was bringing to the table. Myself, my friends, we were hanging out for a long time. And when you keep hanging out with people for a long enough time, eventually you're celebrating big moments together. And your kids are probably hanging out with one another. And now you don't even view them as friends anymore. You view them as family. That's something that I was able to share in my toast. And trying to give a toast in a party like this is not easy because you need to know how to command everyone's attention because different people are having these sidebar conversations. Everyone's wondering when is the food going to come. So you need to gather people in the right area. You need to let them know, yo, the food is going to be served right after this 3 to 4 minute toast. So they're capable of enjoying what you are going to say. And I'm sure a lot of people are hungry. I'm sure they're building up an appetite for the party. So you don't want them to think that they're just going to be waiting for the food for a long time. And they will listen to you if you tell them it's roughly going to be 3 to 4 minutes. And after you get everyone's attention, then you need to have the confidence to deliver it. Every now and then, make people laugh. You tell some jokes. This is the way to do it. And this is where a public speaking background comes in clutch. But in addition to that, let's say you have games. When you have games, you need to share the rules. You don't just expect everyone to know the rules for the games. So now you have to use your voice again. Certain people are going to challenge you. They're going to say, man, this game is lame. Man, the rules are too confusing. And that's when you need to be able to adjust on your feet. See, this is where Toastmasters came in clutch because they have the whole table topics section where it forces you to learn and think on your feet. That is what was happening to me. I was thinking on my feet, especially when people were pushing back. And that is where public speaking was coming in clutch. So if you are someone that has Toastmasters experience, don't think you're only going to use this at work and that's about it. There's going to be times when you are hosting a party and being able to use your voice like a tool is handy. Speaking of games, by the way, I kid you not, Toastmasters is great, but another thing that's great is TikTok. I learned so many unique games through TikTok. I mean, I just typed in Friendsgiving games and I saw a couple of different games. Some were confusing, but other games were easy. And suddenly I noticed a pattern. Red cups. Some of the easiest games included red cups. For example, couples pong tournament. You've heard of beer pong. Well, instead of playing it with beer, you play it with water. So you have a tournament for that. Another game is guys versus girls, where they're building a cup tower. And there were just different games. And more importantly, after the games, there were prizes. See, prizes bring out a primal side to a human. If you're just having games and that's about it, it's not as fun. It's just, okay, you guys are playing games and that's about it. But what makes it really fun is when there are prizes involved. And with the prizes, it brings out the competitive spirit. There are different types of ways to generate people's competitive spirit. For example, in Toastmasters, the Toastmasters competition, not even the competition, actually. Now that I think about it, even the weekly meetings, they have the Toastmasters ribbons. These ribbons are a great way for people to participate. It creates incentive. And eventually, as time goes on by, you start to collect the ribbons, and what you won in a single meeting suddenly starts to hold more value over time. So don't just have games, but have games with prizes. Don't just have speeches or a speech competition, have speeches and a speech competition with prizes. And I'm not always opposed to participation trophies. I think for competitive games, you do want a a prize that other people aren't getting. But in other situations where participating is the reward, you want to have participation trophies. Now you may think, wait a minute, Armani, when is it ever a situation where the participation is the reward? I'll give you an example. When you are asked to be a groomsman. So this person knows tons of people, the person that's getting married, and they asked you to be the groomsman. From their network of, let's say, 200 people, you were one of the select few chosen. So in this situation, participating was the prize. And that's why you need to get the right gift for them. You need to either get them those flasks, you need to get them the watches, you need to get them something, and it rewards them, right? So prizes are really important. I actually learned how important prizes were after hosting Friendsgiving this year, because when I would give the prizes, I would do this thing where I was interviewing them right before. So let's say the winners won. Instead of just saying, here are the prizes, I would take them to the side, I would interview them, and then I would build some anticipation and then give them the prizes. This builds more, I would say, anticipation, and it builds more joy for the prize that they won, whether it's just a box of chocolates or whether it's money. Prizes are very similar to birthday cards, where I'm not always the biggest fan of birthday cards, but I understand its importance. What a birthday card is capable of doing is it turns practical gifts and emotional gifts into emotional gifts. So, for example, let's say you're dating someone and they are a big fan of content creation and they want to start content creation, but they're too nervous. Let's say you get them a comb, right? A comb. I mean, this person probably has a comb. So this is not really a practical gift. This is more so an emotional gift. But if you just get them a comb, they may confuse it as a practical gift. So what do? You use this card as a moment to contextualize your gift. Look, I'm giving you this comb because a couple of years earlier, your sister, who was also nervous about content creation, didn't want to do it, but she eventually did it because she thought she didn't look good. But once she learned how to correctly comb her hair, because before she wasn't combing her hair, she's got her fingers into that. But once she started to correctly comb her hair, she built that confidence, and eventually she started to hit record, but more importantly, she would hit publish. And I'm hoping that this comb gives you that same level of confidence. See, this is an emotional gift that will make this person feel a certain type of way. And they know how to feel because your card directed them to feel that way. Now, in other situations, you may get them a super practical gift. And one thing that you will see is that guys love practical gifts. If you get a guy a toaster and he needs a toaster, he'll love it. But a lot of women, they don't always like practical gifts because they feel like you're not really getting into the spirit of things, right? It's sort of like, let's say, it's Halloween and you have a kid. Instead of taking them trick or treating, you just buy them the candy and you give it to them. Your wife may think, "Oh, come on, man. I mean, it's not just about the candy; it's about the whole process of going out, getting ready, and trick or treating." It's very similar with gifts, where if you just give someone, let's say, a toaster because they needed a toaster, guys would love that. They'll be like, "Yo, thanks, bro. I'm surprised you even got me a gift because I didn't get you anything." But girls are gonna say, "Man, that toaster, that's it." But you could turn a very practical gift into an emotional gift with a card. You could say something like, "Yeah, I mean, this toaster is going to be the first furniture item that we're going to get before we move into our new house and we start our newest chapter together." Suddenly, a super practical gift turned into an emotional one. Now, gifts, you may be thinking, well, how come guys like practical gifts and girls like emotional gifts? I think one of the best examples of this was in Seinfeld. Seinfeld, there was this episode where Jerry got Elaine money, and Elaine got mad. Elaine was like, "Money? Why'd you give me money?" But if you give a guy money, he's going to say, "Wait, for real? All right, man, hook me up, bro. Now I could buy some Taco Bell." I believe the reason that both genders are kind of different in terms of gifts is because of what we prioritize. Us guys, we don't even get each other gifts. I don't think I've ever gotten my brother a birthday gift and vice versa. But that doesn't mean that we don't have respect for one another. It just we don't get each other gifts. So if we do, and it happens to be a useful one, now it's just a cherry on top to a cake that never existed. If that makes sense. So it's like, let's say I never get my brother gifts, and for whatever reason, my mouse, this mouse that I'm using, the battery keeps dying. So one day he gets me a new mouse. First, I'm going to be surprised. I'm going to think, "Well, you got me a gift? What? I wasn't expecting you to give me a gift." And then there's another layer where I'm thinking, "Man, this is a useful gift too. I actually needed a mouse." So now you're prioritizing something versus, let's say he gets me flowers. If he gives me flowers, first of all, I'm going to think, um, "Why are you getting me a gift? And second of all, why are you getting me flowers? What am I going to do with flowers?" So a lot of men, we don't care for these emotional gifts. Now, we make an exception when our partner gets us an emotional gift or a kid. Let's say your son or daughter gets you that emotional gift. I recall there was this one coworker I had who started crying because his son used his money to get him chocolates, and he doesn't like chocolates, right? The My coworker didn't like chocolates, but the fact that his son used his own allowance to buy a gift, the dad saw his son's intention rather than something he wasn't even going to eat. So we make an exception for people that we care about, but with other people, especially other men, we're just thinking, "Why are you getting us stuff that I don't need? You're just adding clutter." But with women, when you're getting them a gift, their narrative mind is way more engaged. They want to be told a story. That's why some women, they don't just have a birthday, they have a birth week, right? Or they have a birth month. They want that narrative mind engaged to the best of their abilities. And you will be surprised that engaging someone's narrative mind is not always that difficult. Because as a guy, you may be thinking, engaging someone's narrative mind, that sounds like more money. That seems like I can't just buy one practical gift. I have to buy like a bunch of different gifts. But that's not always the case. It's actually simpler than you think, where you could do something like uh, you want to first of all think in terms of experiences, not gifts. You want to think in terms of a bunch of these micro moments that creates a unified experience. So let's say your girl really wants a birth week, not a birthday, but a birth week. Well, Sunday, what you can do is you can take her out to her favorite brunch spot. This wasn't an actual gift, but this was more so um, something to eat. Okay, this is somewhat of an experience. Now, Monday, what you can do is you could organize the surprise FaceTime call with all of our actual, like, direct relatives, right? So once like for this one, you don't even have to spend any money, but you have to spend time. Now, uh, the next day, you could actually get a gift. The next day, you guys can do like a walk in the park, but you get some flowers right before. So you see what I'm saying? It's not all just one big gift, or it doesn't even have to be money at times. It could be a surprise call that you generate out of the blue moon. It could be something that you built yourself, like a photo album. That is engaging someone's narrative mind. And you will be surprised that doing all of this for a week may come out less than getting a guy one big practical gift. So you just have to think about it correctly. Guys place a lot of importance on practical gifts, while women place way more importance on the experience. They want their narrative mind engaged. Some want it engaged for a week, some want it engaged for a day, but they want it engaged. They just don't want money. They don't want just a toaster. They want a hidden meaning. And more importantly, something that they could market on Instagram once it's all said and done. So men and women are super different in many ways. And I used to learn this a lot when I was working. One thing I recall at work a lot was this was around 2016 or so. Jordan Peterson was rising, and a lot of these intellectuals were rising, where they were pushing back against the wage gap, where apparently women make 75% or 75 cents to every man's dollar. And a lot of men were saying, no, I don't think that's the case. Then why would people hire men at all? Why won't they only hire women? And I think overall, in many situations, the wage gap does exist. I haven't done any research on this, by the way. This is just something that I believe to be the case. Mainly because a lot of men they will prioritize more emphasis on their career, and a lot of men they do have this level of disagreeableness where if you're underpaying them, they will confront you and ask you for a promotion. Where a lot of women don't do that. So I believe that to be the case. But but around that same time, I also recall learning about a reverse version of this, where it's a lot of women being paid the same amount as a man, but they're doing much less. And you don't even have to view it in terms of a woman. You could view it in terms of a parent. But for the sake of simplicity, I want to first start off from a personal anecdote where it's a guy and a girl. But then I want to broaden it more towards a newly made parent. So I recall in this earlier job that I had, there were two guys that had the same position. And I recall they used to get paid around the same amount. They actually, I believe, made the same exact amount because you used to give out this baseline salary, and they got paid the same amount, roughly $85,000. Now, the difference was that the guy, he had just gotten out of a relationship, so he could put all of his eggs in the work basket. He was so reliable. He would work overtime if you asked him to. He was hungry for knowledge. But the girl was in a different position in her life. She was in her 40s. She had three kids, younger ones. And I recall she would always come late to work because she was dropping off her kids in daycare. And she would leave early. She would take the full 1 hour break. And you could tell that she did not live, breathe, and eat work like the guy did. The guy, that's all he could focus on. But the girl, whenever she was at work and she was doing something, her attention was fragmented. Yet they were making the same amount of money. And I thought, man, back then, having having a newly made mom as a coworker is tough because everyone else has to take on that responsibility more. And in a situation like this, if you would see the difference in their work output, the guy should have been paid more. But in this scenario, I mean, practically speaking, it doesn't really make sense because if you do pay the guy more, what's going to happen to the girl? Chances are you're taking away some of her money to pay the guy more. And the girl is the one with 3 kids, where the guy doesn't have any kids. He's single. And a lot of single people, they sometimes feel like their time is not as respected as parents or someone who's married, especially around the holidays when you need coverage. A lot of the moms, a lot of the dads, they're going to say, well, we have to go to Thanksgiving break with our family. And they're looking at the single person like, so you're going to cover, right? But the single person is like, well, I have plans too. I mean, let's just not make it seem like I'm always going to cover. I'll cover this time, but not all the time. Or it could be a different dynamic where there's a newlywed couple versus a couple that has 3 kids. And the grandparents are moving in as well. The priority of time is going to be different. So around that time, I learned that a lot of women are not getting paid the same as men. But at the flip side, there's a lot of women who do get paid the same amount as men, but they do significantly less work. Now, I don't know if this is always a woman thing, but I do know it's a parent thing where parents, the new parents, by the way, they are some of the toughest people to work with because they have another job outside of the current job where you may be only focused on work, but for them, they need to focus on their baby. They gotta change the diapers, they gotta feed the baby, they have to deal with the stress. So they can't focus fully on work. And when they can't focus fully on work, guess who has to pick up the load? You. Now it stings when you're doing more work than them, but they're making roughly around the same amount of money or even more than you. That's when it stings. And that's when you have to evaluate what type of career do you want. You have to understand that in every career out there, there's going to be moments where it's bumpy, where you are in a super unfair situation, but you got to ride the waves. But before you even decide to ride the waves, you have to see what type of problem this is. Is this one of these problems or one of these problems? These problems, and by the way, if you're listening to me and not seeing me, I'm moving my hand side to side. These problems where you're just moving side to side are the worst types of problems to be in. It's basically you're picking up other people's work, but it's not helping you grow at all. For example, let's say you're working in fast food, and let's say there's a person who is supposed to be doing a certain role, but they just don't know how to do it or they keep forgetting. So you're now having to do their job for them. And I recall a long time ago when I used to work in Subway, we all used to have our compartments where there was one part of the cycle where you ask for bread, cheese, and what type of meat. Then the other part, you asked what type of vegetables and sauce do you want? And then you would wrap it up. And then the other part where it was being a cashier. I recall I had to do the vegetables, and the person right before me, they had to do the whole bread and meat and the cheese aspect. But this person couldn't cut the bread. You have to use this tiny knife and you have to cut it really quick. But they didn't know how to do it. So they would always ask me to do it. They would always ask me to do it. And I thought, man, I have to do my work and I have to do your work. And it's not like I'm learning anything new. I'm just doing this motion. How about you learn it? But due to poor management, due to the manager not teaching this person, I tried to teach them. They didn't learn. So I thought, yo, it doesn't make sense to put this guy in bread where he has to cut the bread. Why don't we put him on vegetables? But he didn't like doing vegetables. So, due to poor management and due to me working with a dummy, I was having to do more work and I was just moving side to side. I was not growing at all. This is a bad problem. And in situations like this, you have to somewhat do what you have to do, but you want to start planning out your exit strategy. You want to get out of there. Now, there are other problems where you go up and down. And this is a good situation to be in because this helps you grow. And I'll give you an example. I recall there was this one job that I had where the guy, I mean, he was lazy. He would do the bare minimum. And every now and then, our manager would ask, hey, who could hop on this call? Hey, who wants to present this? Hey, who wants to learn how to do this? And my lazy coworker would never volunteer. The only time he would talk was whenever he was about to leave work. All right, guys, commuting home. But he would never volunteer for more work. And this was a situation where I would always raise my hand. My philosophy was always say yes, especially when you're new to a company. Whenever someone is asking, do you want to learn how this works? Do you want to join this meeting? Do you want to present? Just keep saying yes, yes, yes. So I was saying yes to many things. I was taking more accountability and I was also becoming known for more things versus my lazy coworker. My lazy coworker did not feel any stress at all. But me, I felt a lot of stress. I had to feel the stress of preparing a presentation to deliver to in front of 400 people. I had to feel the stress of dealing with an issue that was not even my fault. I had to deal with the stress of answering questions in a Zoom call for an issue that I did not cause, but I had to take accountability because the other teams were working on the issue. But now I have to explain to the clients, here's what happened, and now I'm getting yelled at. Now, in situations like this, I could have said, my lazy coworker and I, we're getting paid the same amount. What's up with this? But this was a situation I didn't mind because I was learning a lot. I knew more than not only half the team, but half the floor by my first year. So imagine how much I grew my second year. And these amounts of emotions that I was feeling, the stress, is one of the best things if you want to thrive in the corporate space or even in the real world. But let's just use the corporate space for today's example. Have you ever seen those people that are polished in Zoom calls? They have great timing. They don't get agitated. If other people are yelling at them, they know how to stay composed and use their words to put the other person in a calm state. They know how to use their words in order to give the other person information. This type of skill set, it's learned through battles. You probably had to join a lot of calls where you had no clue what was going on. Yet you were getting yelled at left and right. People were like, "Yo, Armani, why isn't this working? Why isn't that working?" And you're like, "Oh, whoa, whoa!" Everyone's yelling at me. I didn't do anything. But in situations like that, when you're feeling those strong emotions and you can't fight anyone, right? Where in the real world, if someone is attacking you, if someone is calling you names, you could just slap them. You could just punch them right in the face. But in these situations, there are upper management involved. There are your coworkers involved. There are clients involved, and they're grilling you. They're yelling at you, all this stuff. You need to learn the art of sitting with these strong emotions. You need to deal with the art of sometimes doubting your self-worth while it's happening, while you're getting critiqued, and still being able to compose yourself and articulate out loud. See, this is a skill set, and those people that are great at their jobs right now, they had to go through this learning curve. And the people that are super high up there, I promise you, all of these guys had moments when they had a lazy coworker who was getting paid the same amount, and they had to decide, well, what type of problem am I dealing with? Am I dealing with these problems where it's just keeping me left and right? Or is it a problem that's helping me grow? And chances are these were problems that were helping them grow. They kept putting themselves in these scenarios. They learned how to sit with strong emotions and still be able to convey ideas. And other people saw that. Other people started to associate them as a person who gets things done, doesn't take things too hard too much, has thick skin, has a good attitude. And once promotions were available, these people were chosen. So that's how the game works. There are going to be moments when you are dealing with straight up dummies, people that don't care about their roles at all. You have to take up more of the work. But this is what I call a good problem to have, especially if your days are unpredictable. If your days are too predictable, then you're probably not growing. But if your days are unpredictable, where some days you're expecting it to be busy, but it's not, and other days you're expecting it to be calm, but it's busy, this unpredictability helps you grow. So you definitely want to put yourself in these tough scenarios. More importantly, you just want to be known as a guy who is known to get things done. I mean, there are going to be so many people who know how to talk, who know how to write these fancy emails, but they don't know how to get things done. You want to get in the habit of getting things done. I mean, there are different communication mediums out there. There's the Zoom call, there's the emails, there's the pings, where I I made a detailed video and a blog post, by the way, on when you should call, email, ping. I'm not going to break it down too much right now in today's talk, but what I do want to say is that if you really want to get some stuff done, you need to be able to use all of these different mediums as needed, even face to face. I mean, sometimes you need to ping people, right? You need to directly message them and ask for a response. Sometimes you need to be thorough. You hit them up on the emails. Sometimes you're just like, all right, you know what? None of this is getting done. Guys, here's the Zoom number. Let's let's start troubleshooting. So for you to build that reputation as the person who gets things done, you need to be the person who is willing to try new things. Other people can't quite predict your job for you. You provide value, but it's very hard for you to articulate what you do out loud to other people. And this is one thing that you need to work on. And this is something that it is not easy. Where before 2011-ish, if you said, I'm an electrical engineer, most people would understand what that meant. But nowadays, you're probably not known just as an electrical engineer within the internal company. Chances are you do a bunch of different things, and people are like, oh, you're not an electrical engineer, you're XYZ. So now you have pride in being XYZ. So when you're trying to articulate this out loud to other people are looking at you like, you could tell they don't understand. And you may think, oh, they're probably not going to understand. But view it as your job to help them understand if they're curious. There have been times when people would ask me, Armani, what do you do? And I would try to explain it. They had no clue what I was saying. I just say, you know what, forget it. But other times people actually wanted to know. They're like, oh, can you, I'm not getting it. You may feel offended. You may be thinking, well, what do you mean? You don't know what I do. Do you know who I am? You may be tempted to do something like that, but don't, because this is an honest question. They have no clue what you do because they don't live the life that you live at work. So in scenarios like this, it's a great opportunity for you to flex your explanation skills. Look, here's what I do. And you're using analogies, right? I recall a long time ago, I used to work in this aerospace company, and basically I would make aeronautic man, I can't even pronounce it anymore. It's been so long. Oh, by the way, use it or lose it. So if you don't explain what you do consistently, you start to get rusty and you start to mumble a lot. You start to have these gaps in your understanding. But I remember it was called OASIS, uh, Operational Aeronautic Systematic Instrumentation System, whatever. I forgot, man. It was just called OASIS and it was an acronym. Back in those days, I could explain what I did. I would talk people's ears off, but after a while, I could just tell no one got what the heck I was talking about. I could barely even pronounce it out loud right now. So imagine how they felt back then. How I'm feeling now is how they felt back then. So after some time, I had to explain it. I said, guys, imagine this. Imagine that you are driving, right? But you don't have any of those mirrors, like those rear view mirrors, those side mirrors, none of that. You're just driving without any mirrors and you're driving without a speedometer. Could you still drive? Most people said, yes, you could still drive technically, but would you feel confident driving? Most people said no. I asked them why. Why wouldn't you feel confident driving? Like, dude, because the ways that I get information, it's gone. I use the rear view mirror to see if there's a car behind me. So if there's not, then I could take a right turn or a left turn. Uh, But without that mirror, now I have to keep twisting my neck. What about the speedometer, bro? If the speedometer is missing, I don't know if I am driving at the correct speed limit. And now I'm going to keep second guessing myself. Anytime I feel like I'm driving at a certain speed limit, I'm going to force myself to lower it because I don't want to get a ticket. I just got a ticket last week because I went over the speed limit. But how am I supposed to know? I don't have a speedometer. Without the tools, you start to lose confidence. With the tools, you start to have more clarity. Well, long story short, folks, when I worked in the aerospace company, I would create tools that will give pilots confidence. I would give them information about their surroundings so they had better ideas on how to fly the plane, or I don't know what else it was used for, maybe rocket ships as well. Now, with this sort of explanation, people are capable of understanding. But you don't want to waste your time. You don't want to be explaining what you do for a living to someone who does not care. For some people, it's just this filler conversation material. That's that's honestly how I feel about whenever I ask the question. For a lot of people, whenever I ask them, "What do you do?" it's a quick way to get the conversation done with before we go on to the next topic, just so I have more clarity about this person. But every now and then, when I ask this question, I can tell this person is dying to talk about it. And that is when I will ask follow up questions. So, you want to explain more to people who want to know. Maybe they want to come into your industry. Whenever I tell people where I work or what type of business that I do, I could tell that they want to know more. For example, with Armani Talks, what do you do, Armani Talks? I pretty much create content to help engineers and entrepreneurs improve their communication skills. This, for a lot of people, is like, oh, whatever. But for other people, they're like, wait, for real, man? Yo, man, let me get your YouTube channel. Let me get your podcast. Because I am an engineer, and anytime I'm trying to present my ideas in a Zoom meeting, I'm just confused. I don't know where to look. I don't have any charisma. Even though my ideas are better than other people, they're the ones getting the promotions. I'm like, bro, I got videos on all of this. Every now and then people are like, well, do you have any consulting services? I was like, yeah, man, but I'm very selective with who I work with. I don't really like working with people that much. So the few people that I work with, they know how to find me. And that's when they'll discover ArmaniTalks.com, where you can go on services, where you could apply for a free consultation session, where this is when there's true desire, right? But the way that it works is that there is uh, there's free content that makes people aware about me from different parts of the world, different engineers and entrepreneurs, and from that, people have this rapport with me, and from that, if people do want to work with me, they do their own research. They go on ArmaniTalks.com, eventually click services and find me from there. So now I'm explaining my business model to someone who's actually curious versus someone who's just asking these same questions over and over. They have no curiosity at all. And I'm going to explain to you for what. So before you take the time to explain what you do in depth, you want to make sure that there is a certain level of understanding. And for other people, you just want to know because this is a person you should know what they do. If it's your spouse and you have zero idea what they do for a living, that's not a good look. And your friends may judge you for it. If they're like, what does your spouse do? And you're like, I don't know, man. They're going to wonder, don't you ever ask them any questions? Right? So for people in your inner squad, you want to show that curiosity. If they don't have any desire to explain to you what they do all day, you want to have that curiosity. But some people, they don't want to explain it regardless. They're probably going to explain it once, quickly, get to the point. Other times, they're just going to be like, bro, man, I just got done with work. I don't want to explain what I do at work all day. I want to turn my brain off. So certain people, they have such stressful work lives that they don't want to come back and talk to you more about what they just did in their work life. So you want to obviously build that nuance for it. But I do believe that you want to get in the habit of helping yourself articulate what you do for a living. And that's where tools like AI come in clutch. And people are always being so gloom and doom about AI nowadays. But if you use it correctly, it can come in very useful. You can say, You could just do a brain dump of all the stuff that you do, and then you write something like, help me explain all of this to a 5-year old. And now ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, it's giving you ideas that's helping you learn what you're doing better. You want to contextualize your job as well, where a lot of people are doing work, but they have no context behind the work. One thing that I love about a lot of blue collar people is that they have a lot of pride in what they do. Now, there's this thing right now on TikTok, on social media, where it's the most one sided beef in history, where a lot of blue collar workers are throwing shots at white collar workers, but white collar workers are not throwing the same shots. But there's this idea that white collar workers are throwing shots at blue collar workers. Blue collar workers are always saying, isn't it funny how white collar workers are always looking down on us? I kid you not, man. All these white collar workers that I know, they love blue collar workers. Whenever I see a blue collar worker, I put my hand on their shoulder and I say, thank you for what you do, man. You guys keep the world rotating. But a lot of the blue collar workers, they don't treat me with the same respect. They're like, well, what do you do all day? Now, if you're trying to explain what you do to a blue collar worker, you may start using a lot of these phrases, and the blue collar worker is like, ah, just a bunch of buzzwords, right? But these buzzwords, right? Buzzwords represent 4 to 5 years of your life. Each buzzword you're using, you can't just use it aimlessly. Certain people have perverted buzzwords where they'll just use it because they don't know what they do for a living at all. They're just dumb. But other people, they're actually explaining what they do. They're explaining their life to you in these compartments. And the other person is just like, oh, just buzzwords. No, man, this is actually important information. They're doing their best to dumb down a topic so it's relatable to you, but all you're seeing it is as buzzwords. Um, so I think a lot of white collar workers need to be able to explain what they do it with confidence, where blue collar workers have that pride. I've noticed it time and time again, whether they're an electrician, whether they are laying down bricks, whether they are a plumber, they know things so well and they take pride in it. And it's easy for a blue collar worker to explain a lot of the times what they do. Because if you think about it, that's how their business works. When a homeowner breaks something and they call a plumber, and the homeowner's like, fix it, the plumber knows the nuances, and the plumber has to explain on the spot what is broken. Hey, man, it's not just as simple as changing this. You need to change this, and here's why. So they're getting practice explaining what they do for a living versus a white collar worker. They're not always getting that same practice. So when a blue collar worker asks the white collar worker, what do you do? The white collar worker is like trying to explain, but they can't, or at least in a relatable way. But the blue collar worker, a big part of their role is to explain to white collar workers. I would actually say some of the best communicators out there are blue collar workers because ever since I bought this home, I've had to hire so many different people to do work. And a lot of the times I'm talking to them, I'm like, bro, can't you just fix this, man? They're like, sir, here's why I can't fix it. And they're able to use such logic. Every now and then I'll push back. I'll say, no, man, why can't you just do it for this? Right. And then they'll start to add more nuance to what they were saying before. So nowadays, if a white collar worker in their day to day personal life asks, what do you do? They can come at it from multiple angles, from nuance all the way to general principles. So, as a white collar worker, you definitely want to get in the habit of explaining what you do. And there have been times when I would explain what I did and it would massively influence someone, and I had no clue at the time. I would explain, for example, in one of my past jobs, I'm the systems engineer. And I would say, right now, a lot of engineers, they're subject matter experts, but they're working in these little compartments. And these compartments are supposed to work together because we're building this unified product. But since everyone's working in compartments, the final product doesn't work as intended. Me, the system engineer, I don't think in individual units, I think in terms of the whole. My goal is to understand a little bit of everyone's jobs and make sure that the product is working based on the business requirements. A couple of skill sets that I need are basic technical knowledge in multiple domains, along with strong speaking and writing skills. Now, someone else is hearing that and they're thinking, bro, I'm like the same way. I don't like sitting and just coding or sitting and doing all these circuitry work. I like to look at the big picture of things. What did you say the name of the position was? And back then, when I said systems engineer, 2012, most people would laugh. I recall I went to the College of Engineering. I got my bachelor's in electrical engineering. But when I worked as a systems engineer, I would tell people that a lot of people were intrigued besides the people in College of Engineering. They're like, oh, bro, I don't even know what that is, man. That's not real electrical engineering. So my own people didn't understand, but outsiders who were already electrical engineers that were working these jobs, they would hear what I did and they were like, wait a minute, I don't have to switch out of engineering completely. I just have to switch the type of engineer that I am. So when you're capable of making what you do for a living digestible to others, now you may influence their career. They may think, man, because of this person, I ended up in this field. And this happens a lot with careers as a whole, and not always careers, sometimes with YouTube channels. There were times I was talking to people about YouTube channels, and they just said, I should start one, right? I said, yeah, go ahead, start one. Or blogs. Or I would talk about other people starting blogs. I know this lawyer in Tampa who has a blog that different people come to looking for answers. So if someone is a lawyer, I'll say, well, why don't you start a blog? Right? And when you say something like that, by the way, for many people, they think content creation is this thing that is so hard to set up. A blog, bro, a website? You expecting me to make a website? And they have no clue how to begin. They don't know anything about uh, domains. They don't know anything about hosting platforms, WordPress. They don't know anything about that. So they're nervous. So if you make it simple to understand, or better yet, you don't even need to understand it, bro. I got a guy that makes websites. You want me to make an introduction? Now they're saying, oh, now I'm actually understanding what blogs are. I recall I was talking to this one guy. He was 60 one time, and he was saying, dude, can you believe it? Anytime I have a question, I come on Google and all the answers are here. Isn't that cool? I wonder how Google knows to give me these ones. I wonder who wrote these stuff. And I thought, you don't know this? Dude, type in how to overcome a monotone voice. And then he types that in. And back then, by the way, I was ranking for this particular keyword, how to overcome a monotone voice. He goes down, he's like, wait a minute, Armani Talks. Isn't that you? I was like, yeah, bro, that's me. That's my article. He said, wait a minute, man, a human wrote this? So a lot of people are completely clueless with how content creation works. I said, yes, man, that's exactly what happened. A human wrote it, very similar to newspapers, right? And a newspaper is not something that just wrote itself. A human wrote it. Why? Is because of interest. There's stories out there that are interesting. So a human, a journalist, ended up writing this newspaper that you're reading. A newspaper is physical, where a blog, it's something that you could see in the internet. Same concepts though. It's a person who saw that there is demand in a certain keyword. A lot of people around the world are trying to overcome a monotone voice. Now, instead of a journalist, a content creator wrote the blog and then they published it. So the whole world can now see it. And now it's registering for other people. And now this person is thinking, well, I know a lot of stuff. I mean, should I start a blog? If you want. And then now at least you're demystifying the concept. It's not something that's super hard to do, right? Or at least get started with. Then with podcasts, all this stuff, once you understand the basic phenomena, it's pretty easy to get set up, but you need to demystify what is occurring rather than making things complex for no reason. And that is what great communicators are all about. So if you enjoyed today's talk and you want to get more insights on how to be a clear, confident communicator, then you definitely want to check out the Armani Talks free daily newsletter. Every single day at 7 p.m. EST, I'm dropping brand new newsletters on public speaking, social skills, emotional intelligence. I help you level up in your corporate work. I help you level up your entrepreneurship goals, such as starting that YouTube channel, such as gathering your thoughts, making it concise, and publishing it on a blog. I cover all things communication skills related. So to join the tribe, go on armanitalks.com/newsletter, sign up today, join the tribe, and I will catch you next time.